Welcome to the Addiction Recovery Place podcast. My name is Chris Langley. I'm the host of the podcast. Very thrilled to introduce my guest today. This is Alex Gooderman, who's a primary counsellor at Jaywalker Lodge. Jaywalker Lodge is a rehab facility in beautiful Carbondale, Colorado for men suffering from substance abuse and co-occurring disorders. Thanks very much for being here, Alex. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris, for having me.
So tell us, what makes Jaywalker Lodge such a unique program?
Well, to my knowledge, and I certainly don't know all rehab or treatment programs in the country, but my understanding is there's really a couple of aspects. One is the long-term nature of the program. There are some others like this, but we've got three-step. We've got a landing or sort of a place, stabilization, the main lodge program, solutions, sober living, and then a graduate program. So it can be a year. And then I would say even more beyond that is the alumni community around the area, but also nationally and internationally, is quite possibly by far the strongest that I've seen in any recovery program. And because we know the effects of community and connection and having, quote, the man next to you or the person next to you caring. We have, I think, over 600 alums within X miles of here. They support each other sponsorship wise, personally, even employment and such. So I would say probably, the length of the program itself, the strength of the alumni community, and then the quality of the staff. I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. And lastly, what I would call almost the intangibles, which intangibles are clinically and sort of spiritually so critically important. So all those things combined, and then the fact that we ski at Aspen, I don't know how that happened, but we ski up at Aspen and we're in a very, very beautiful place. So those all together, there's nothing quite like it, I think, in the world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it certainly looks an idyllic location and a wonderful place for you to work as well, Alex. So no, it's absolutely gorgeous up there. So can you tell me, so when someone enters treatment for the first time at Jaywalker Lodge, what can they expect? And what's the initial process for this?
For sure. So, obviously there's the kind of the admissions interview that a person's going to do at any facility. They'll speak with people preliminarily. And if there's a substantial resonance or connection, then they'll have a longer interview. Most of our men have had multiple treatment experiences. In fact, the Jaywalker parable, if you will, or metaphor from the AA Big Book is the chronic relapser. And the Jaywalker is a story in the Big Book is used to illustrate the fundamental mental illness of addiction. As far as I am doing something very damaging to me, I'm continuing to do it in spite of early warnings and damage that increases over time. So many of our guys will, and it's a men's treatment center. So many of our men will had been in treatment centers before. They'll fly in here or they'll drive in, or a consultant or a sober coach or whoever family will bring them. And then the landing is a separate building, and the landing is their initial experience. And in the landing, there'll be medical stabilization. There'll be potentially, sort of a not acute detox, but a detox process, as well as groups, which are kind of fundamentally basic, introducing them to the program here. And the groups that I run over there are other clinicians who run groups over there, but I kind of run what I would call an introductory curriculum, although it's sensitive to the fact that a lot of these guys do have other treatment experience. And they'll have certain they won't be cleared right away for our more strenuous outdoor stuff, but they'll have access to our cultural offerings, to some travel into Glenwood. And also they'll be hitting AA meetings, and they will be doing cross-country skiing or hiking or things like that if they're fit, as well as meeting their primary counselor, who will be assigned to them at that point.
Yep. So the main aim is to keep them as busy as possible, but then just to break them in very gently to see kind of where they're at within their kind of addiction. And then they move on to, I think you said the lodge after that? The lodge, yeah.
Yeah, but I should add that at the landing also there's assessment of mental health as well, because even though, as you know, the admission process can be fairly substantive, but you don't really know. Certain things may be hidden, certain things may be deliberately not said, or you simply don't know a person's reality till they land with you. So on occasion, there will be people who are not cleared to go over to the lodge. It's rare, but it does happen. And those people would be referred or recommended to a more higher level of mental health care.
Okay, so it depends on the mental health at that stage, whether or not they're going to move
Correct.
on to the.
Correct.
Okay, so everything's done very
Correct. But that's
gently.
very small percent.
Of
Yeah. I'm
course, of
sorry.
course.
Yeah.
No, 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 not at all. Because obviously you have an incredible team there, Jaywalker Lodge. You seem to cover everything. I've looked to your website, and I was just so impressed with the amount of the level of service that you provide your guys is pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, second to none. So I'd certainly take my hat off to you all
Well,
at
thanks.
Jaywalker Lodge. I really
Thank you.
do. Um, you offer different treatment programs for those experiencing drug use, mental health, and you also have a family support program. And when I
Yes.
researched your service, one of the programs I was particularly impressed with, that I haven't really come across too many times before, was the family program. So how do you and the team at Jaywalker Lodge make family as inclusive as possible in someone's recovery journey?
For sure. So the family program is really multi-layered. The anchor of the family program is Lenny Bolio, who's our family specialist, and he offers a weekly Zoom, not only for the families, spouses, siblings, parents, partners, what have you, of clients who are in the program, but also alum families can come in, and they often do. And so the weekly Zoom is a support gathering where it's not an Al-Anon meeting, it's a Jaywalker support gathering, although they are encouraged to go to Al-Anon as well. So
Mm,
that weekly Zoom is kind of the ongoing support that's provided.
yes.
And then you're going to have updates from the primary clinicians for their caseload to whoever is the appropriate caregiver, assuming that's indicated and there's a release. Those will occur weekly.
Mm,
And then we also have a family intensive on site. With COVID, it was off site or hybrid, but
yeah.
it's returned to on site, and it starts Thursday afternoon and concludes Sunday midday. And it involves social experiences. It involves an Al-Anon experience, a bunch of psychoeducation, including with our chief medical officer, and some experiential and process groups with the clients, as well as plenty of time for people if they want to go out to dinner or do what have you. And often families will put some skiing on one side or the other, or some outdoors activity. So between all of that, and then with the alumni spirit here, a lot of some of the families, even they're of means. We have a number of families who've moved up here, or they purchased a place. Their sons often stay here, some even for 5 years or more. So
Mhm.
it's pretty continuous, and it's very I've participated in quite a few of the family intensives. In fact, we just concluded one yesterday, and I would say that the what I hear most from the families are two comments that are related. One is they're profoundly impressed by the community and how the guys interact and support one another, and they're palpably affected by what you might call the atmosphere, the friendliness, the caring, and the welcoming atmosphere in the entire place. So those are kind of what I hear the most.
Yeah. I've never, as I said earlier, I've never really come across that view. I think that's such an important part of recovery.
Absolutely.
Family
Right. And
support.
no, it is. And I should add that in addition to what you might call the containing and the support, the family systems work. I mean, the family systems work is absolutely essential in long-term serious recovery. And so I engage, because we have a longer program, my lodge clients, I'll usually begin to engage the system at about week 5.
Yes. Okay. So it gives them a kind of way of getting into the program for 5 weeks, and then they
Correct.
can, yeah,
Correct.
that's
And it
great.
gives me, I will be meeting obviously with the client extensively, but
Mm,
also with the parents independently. I want to get to know both
mhm.
halves before I bring everyone together. It's not always parents. It can be spouses,
Of
partners,
course,
siblings as
of
well.
course, of course. But just family in general is such a
Yes.
vital component to recovery. So
Essential.
no,
Yep.
no,
Yep. It's
that's
been
fantastic. Really is. With the drug use program at Jaywalker Lodge, relapse prevention is obviously at the core of all drug treatment. Can you tell us how your team prepares your clients for relapse prevention, and what tools do you enshrine into them to make their recovery as successful as possible?
Yeah, it's so, if you do the standard 30-day, I went to the Meadows back in the day myself, and so, you're going to be getting out very soon after you arrive. And so the basic tools around fundamental tools around relapse prevention, resisting triggers, dealing with cravings, changing, if possible, certain external circumstances that incline one towards an old lifestyle. Those are essential, and they're certainly not they're not ignored by any means here. But what I would say that the way that I would describe our relapse prevention is more, if you will, logotherapeutic, to borrow from Frankl. That is to say, our program, our real program, is a year program that involves an immersion of a client into what is life in sobriety, in recovery, with joy, intimacy, sorrow, sharing. And a key component for our successful clients is that we do not have in-house 12-step meetings. What we do is we have a community surrounding us: Glenwood, Carbondale, Basalt, Aspen, Willits, and we empower and transport clients into the community. We're an open door. The client can walk out at any time and go get a drink if that's their choice. But the idea is that they're given the opportunity to enter the community. That they're required in the lodge to attend 4 outside 12-step meetings a week, and sponsorship is a vital part of that. So I would say that the relapse prevention writ large that we are attempting to achieve is, this is life in recovery. You have an opportunity here to create a life in recovery that is proprietary to you, that you value, and begin to see what life can be like in sobriety. And so the incentives of the carrot rather than the stick of fear, although the stick of fear is essential. We know that too. So that would be the kind of gold level, if you will, of our relapse prevention, while all the other skill stuff is, of course, thrown into.
That's an exceptional explanation of relapse prevention that I've not really heard before. That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And let me add one thing, Chris, to that,
course.
which is explicitly the alumni community and the network. This is an open community model. It's like a village, or my best analogy for it is a British regimental combat unit where the officers eat and die. It has a law and it has a history together. We look out for each other. Yep. We know what each other are up to, but also maybe even better is a small liberal arts college. There are different buildings. People know the shopkeepers in the area. You can walk around, you see alums, et cetera. So there's this sense of containment. So even I think at a deeper level, there's relapse prevention and there's relapse capture. So the fact that you're in a community that cares and that sees you may be preventing quite a bit of relapse. But also, we have guys who stay in our community. If they have slips or relapses, return quickly and state that they knew they were welcomed and loved, rather than being in a motel in LA dying slowly. So it's so subtle. It's not just an on or off switch. Anyway, back to you. It's an interesting model for sure.
No, it really is, and it's clearly something that works and resonates with the clients as well. So the fact that they know that support structure is there and full for the long term.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big game changer for a lot of people.
I think so. So.
Definitely. Over in the UK, we could just talk a little bit about dual diagnosis, because obviously that's part of your treatment program. Accessing services in the UK is very difficult if you've got dual diagnosis, because the mental health teams don't want to work with people who are currently using drugs, even if it's Suboxone or methadone, and drug services don't want to work with adult or people with mental health issues if they're not accessing the services. So we've kind of got a real issue, and it's kind of how the services are set up, really. I think it's just how it is over there. So how do you work and assess those who present as having dual diagnosis, and what are the challenges for helping people with this condition?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to be really clear. One of the strengths and one of the weaknesses of this place is that it's expensive. I previously worked at a clinic for the indigent, homeless vets, and Native Americans and others in Duluth, Minnesota. And the problems, we were all suffering, but the problems faced by that population demographically, we've got people here flown in on their wife's jet.
Yes.
And we've got people here whose names everyone knows.
Yes.
And so they are lucky enough to have access to high quality treatment, as opposed to people in a social services setting. And long term, I'm hoping to bring this model to people who are from a different economic strata, but that's another day. To your point, so with respect to dual diagnosis, this is what we deal with, and we know, and as a professional in the field, that first of all, substance abuse or misuse or overuse is itself a mental health problem, and that secondarily it generates a host of mental health problems. And thirdly, it is often generated by underlying. We know this, right?
Yes.
So for us, we have a strong psychiatric team. We have good therapists, but but the nature of our program is social, experiential, and it requires a certain base level of functioning.
Mhm.
So the so our first assessment realm is around acute mental health issues that, if they are deemed to be organic to the person versus substance induced,
Mhm.
or if they're even if they're simply so severe that they present toxicity or unmanageability in our milieu. So, because the ultimate driver of treatment in our program, the clinical team exists to keep the peer group healthy and functional.
Mhm.
The peer group evolves over time and self-regulates on social norms, moral norms, risk-taking, encouragement. The good athletes in an ideal are supporting the quiet introverts. The
Mhm.
quiet introverts are sharing poetry and art with the jocks, and hopefully everybody's growing.
Mhm.
But if we use that analogy of, if you will, a liberal arts campus of recovery, if we find people are mentally health compromised to the degree that they're not able to benefit from it,
Mm.
and or they're toxic, then we will refer, or sometimes staff remove at staff request, remove people.
Of course.
But I will say that in many cases, what you will find is, because we treat for minimum 90 days, and usually because 65% of our guys go to Solutions or a nearby Solutions itself,
Mm.
we basically have most of our guys for 180 days. So what that allows us to do, assuming the family's amenable to this, and most are because they've tried other places,
Mm.
is we get to work with the person's complexity of mental health in its relation to substances, with our good psychiatric team getting a look at them over time, and importantly, with logotherapeutic and family systems interventions adding to that, as
Mhm.
well as general clinical work. So we get the opportunity to really separate the mental health situations we can handle and those we can't, because we have way more than 30 days to handle it and evaluate it. And we sometimes miss the mark, and sometimes we do a good job, hopefully more often than not. And we recently referred a guy with severe depression for ECT
Mhm.
after working, and he's doing better now, and hopefully that was part of that.
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic. Because so you work with people for around about 6 months on a residential basis. So you've kind of given the time to kind of really get.
The average Jaywalker client, yes, the average or even more than average, we work with for a minimum of 6 months.
Yes.
And some go AMA, some leave after 3, some stay for 3 years and work for us. But the average, I would say, we probably have in our community for 7 or 8 months.
Wow. Wow. That's absolutely superb. So
It does
as
help.
oh, I'm sure it does. Definitely. That's
Yeah.
that's testament to the amazing work that you guys do up there. Um,
Well, yeah, but also just to the opportunity,
mm,
other people would be doing equivalently amazing work if they had that time opportunity with their clients. It really does help.
of course, of course. So as a counseling practitioner, Alex, what are some of the
Yes,
main challenges that you and your colleagues face in providing treatment for your guys?
absolutely. So the main challenges is what we all face in this work. It's the sorrow and loss associated with deaths,
Mm.
overdoses, disasters,
Mhm.
pain, people
Mhm.
you love, people that you've worked with. A client that I cared for, and I knew his family very, very well, died, went out. He had been not telling the truth here. He didn't
Mhm.
tell the truth in his IOP,
Mhm.
not, and he died of a combination of overdosing and auto accidents, and left behind a little daughter. And so the main how, and it's no different for anyone from a state clinic to a psychiatrist at Harvard. How do we give our all and yet also save ourselves and keep ourselves protected? We're
Exactly.
on the front lines of agony, right? So
Yes.
that's the biggest challenge. And then
Mhm.
I would say that, so, and then unique, I think, to Jay, not unique, but very much a part of our challenges is that if you come from a clinical setting where, let's say, you have an office, maybe it's even a treatment center, and you see some people once or twice a week, run a couple groups, and maybe see them in the cafeteria, fair. But the the combination of our open community model that we ski with the guys, we dine with them, we also get very connected with the family system, and because of the nature of our clients, there's sometimes trust funds involved, or judges and the law, or this or that. The amount of stakeholders in our clients' experience can be quite large. For the clinicians here, especially the new ones, you tend to bring a model where the blinders are on the client only, but the factors surrounding the client in this particular context are so complex that it's a very serious challenge for Jaywalker clinicians to begin to think in terms of the variables, and that's a major one. And I think so. Lastly, I would add this, and there's plenty others, but the old model of rehab, and Jaywalker, was created a while back by Bobby Ferguson. There's a certain type of person in a certain type of situation that the model was created for. And our clinical director, Stephen Bate, has reported that in his view, the complexity from a mental health standpoint, the acuity of cases coming in, the diversity of substances, the dangerousness of substances. You don't do casual drug use when fentanyl's in your stuff, right? It's not casual anymore. It's Russian roulette every time.
That's
You
right.
know, I'm 59. People used to smoke a joint. The concentrated stuff they're using now is like 20 joints. So the combination of all those things creates a complexity and acuity and mental health challenges. And then the cultural support of chemical use for mental health and the cultural support of cannabis are creating an entire class of clients who are coming in at what I would call step zero, where they're sincerely investigating a variety of substances from a medicinal or psychiatric standpoint. The problem is often they're doing it on their own. Like, oh yeah, ketamine is helping out many friends of mine under supervision and is almost killing many clients of mine because they're doing it. So this is a very different world from the old days of treatment. And those are all challenges that I think mix together. And I'm sure I've missed a dozen challenges.
I'm sure you have, but that gives how's Colorado dealt with the cannabis issue? Is it increased? Would you say it's increased?
Well, yeah,
Or-
Colorado was a pioneer, as you know, one of the first legalizing states. The tax revenues, when I remember when I first, after legalization, when I flew into Denver, and there's a long stretch between Denver Airport and downtown, and I was like, what are all these green buildings? They were all dispensaries, right? It was just, it was like dispensary row. I know that Colorado is gaining financially massively from that choice. I also know that from a legal standpoint, Colorado, for example, the Skier Protection Act around drunk or high skiers hitting people. I mean, I'm not there. Colorado is wrestling with the same thing these guys are wrestling with, which is this particular substance is not going to kill you on an overdose, right? And addiction or dependence on this particular substance is in many ways, as we know, more subtle, less ostensibly or overtly frightening socially, and in other ways. So it's in my view, it's a sorting out process.
Yes.
And I like to try and get my guys to a Marijuana Anonymous meetings online, not because I'm never trying to get a client to buy into a particular path, but to explore how are people who are in recovery from using the substance, what are they seeing, feeling, and reporting? And so I would say we're in a discovery process around these things and other substances, mushrooms, microdosing, all that stuff. And how does that relate to rehab, particularly when you're in a 12-step abstinence-based model? We're not a harm reduction model.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
It must have been quite a change over there with the laws and kind of with treatment around cannabis, because obviously, as you mentioned earlier, THC levels have gone way up. Everything's
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. That
No, and I'm a recent transplant to the state, so I can't speak to the long history of it here, but I can speak to what I have seen.
Of course, and you obviously see a lot of it. So what theoretical approaches to treatment does Jaywalker Lodge use, and how is this incorporated in your extensive program, Alex?
For sure. So as I mentioned previously, Jaywalker's mission and model itself as an institution, kind of from an umbrella or meta standpoint, if I were to describe these things from a theoretical lens, I would say that it's existential, logotherapeutic, with Adlerian underpinnings, meaning that Jaywalker aims to provide clients over time the opportunity to find a meaningful life for themselves in a community not in a hospital or in a lockdown.
Mhm.
So there's your existential.
Yes.
And there's your logotherapeutic. That is to say, man can deal with any why if he or any how or whatever or what if he knows why he's doing it. So the idea that a client finding joy in this experience and seeing others, that's very, very important, staff and others in the community having partnerships, having jobs, having outdoor experiences, sober and creating artwork or what have you. Saying, oh, there's a reason, there's a why, there's a
Mhm.
reason why I might want to get sober. And then when I talk about Adler, I'm simply referring to Adler's views that essentially mental health and mental illness can be defined in terms of our ability to participate on an equal playing field in a society. You see that in the AA Big Book
Yeah.
or in the AA literature when people describe being a worker among workers. I'm neither better nor worse than my fellows and sisters in recovery. I'm in the team. I'm in here, I'm working. And likewise, I don't need to, from a mental health standpoint, I don't need to manufacture reasons to be above everyone, and I don't need to hide below everyone.
Yeah.
So you have this leveling both within the AA community, but also here, where within our group processes here, the guys will naturally correct the arrogant and support the timid.
I love it. Wow. Okay.
And oh, and let me just add,
Yeah.
that's the large picture. And then from the standpoint of individual clinicians, one of the things I absolutely love about this place is it's extraordinarily supportive to its employees and staff, extraordinarily nurturing. We are encouraged to pursue our theoretical orientations,
Mhm.
our particular approaches. I would say I'm primarily existential and psychodynamic in my approach.
Yes.
My colleague Alice is primarily dialectical in her approach. My colleague Chris is primarily trauma-based, evidence-based science, that type of
Mhm. Mhm.
neurological. And we actually have a little forum called Lunch and Discuss where a clinician or staff will bring to lunch, some theoretical stuff, and we might hear from Chris about trauma or from me about different psychodynamic views or what have you. So there's an overall approach, and then the individual clinicians are encouraged to pursue their passions and their excellence. That said, obviously, we need to be able to communicate and support each other.
Of course. So you've got an exceptionally good team there working together and as a proper group, and you support each other very well, obviously.
The support, I think, Doc Bouchon is a Princeton and Harvard acclaimed psychiatrist who runs our medical program. He's been around for a long time, and he talks about, he's impressed with what he calls the above average quality of the clinical team. And what I can speak to, since I've only been in a couple different centers, I can speak more to the support. I have never been in an environment with more intra-staff support. It really feels beyond profoundly loving and healthy as a setting for employment. And obviously that affects the clients.
Mhm.
That speaks to the intangibles, the heart and soul of change, that book about what really works in therapy, and trust, rapport, and certain intangibles, ironically, are research and evidence supported to be the real factors. So
Mhm. Yeah.
comfort, safety, like
And
that.
obviously that's the clients are going to see that as well, that you work well as a team and you've got the support there, which I think is very important. I mean, my past experience, if there's any team issues, the clients pick up on that so quickly, and it's so damaging to their therapy as well, because that's not why they're there.
Family environment redux.
Mhm.
The clients will, because we have men and women on staff. It's a house that the clients will automatically project family issues into the environment. It's an automatic. So if they see a dysfunctional family, it's going to be worse because most of them had that experience in certain ways.
Mhm.
And we will see it again and again. We have a community meeting every Tuesday, and it's a pretty radical experience for a treatment center. We're all sitting in a circle, staff and clients, and it's an open conversation about what's going on. It can get very heated. Just the other day, we had a borderline client who unfortunately had to go elsewhere to take 25 minutes of community time to tell us that we're incompetent and unethical. It's just not something you're going to hear at a normal treatment center. And he was a man in incredible pain and in a major crisis, and he had some important critiques of our program. Nothing's perfect, but he had said, after having that opportunity, he had said, people didn't hear me, they shut me down. I said, from a dialectic standpoint, borrowing from Alice, my colleague, I said, look, it is true that eventually you were asked to stop when the chief psychiatrist and the chief clinician indicated they started to feel this was personal rather than community stuff.
Mm.
So you were asked to stop. It's also true that you had 25 minutes of community time. And it's likely the case that at no other treatment center in the world would you have had a respectful listening group of leaders, executive staff, and clients as you leaf through your notebook of complaints.
Mm.
That so the dialectic is that you had possibly the most serious hearing you will ever have in a professional setting in
Mhm.
a group.
Mhm.
So pretty interesting. And my point was only that putting aside the legitimacy or illegitimacy of specific comments this gentleman made, the energy and the affect he was bringing were directly related to his strategies for survival within his family unit. And he
Mhm.
was just bringing that to our big dinner table, if you will.
Yeah. How was that left then? So, I mean, he left, but how many people were involved in that process?
There were about 40 people in the room,
Oh, wow.
maybe more.
Okay. Pretty intense time then.
In,
So,
including leaders from like the CFO was there
yeah.
and the chef was there, all the clients were there, all the clinicians. And there was process before and after this, but this was if it were a film, this was the high watermark of the film of his experience at our program. It would,
Hmm.
the high intense point.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow.
Love the guy and hope he's okay.
Of course, of course. Just got a couple more questions, Alex, but there's some ones I really wanted to get
Sure.
in. So the next question is, I find one of the hardest parts of rehabilitation of addictions is the what comes next question after a client has completed a program. I see that Jaywalker's got an exceptionally good, you've got this well and truly covered basically. You have an excellent graduate program. Tell us about the graduate program and kind of the time frame and kind of what's involved with that.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll just walk you through the step down in general. So you've got the landing, then the main program is the lodge. And from an insurance standpoint, it's designated PHP. They're doing their groups in a separate building. They're not in a lockdown. So, but in terms of like what comes next, the fundamental choice points that each client will face is whether to remain in our continuum beyond the lodge and then thereafter.
Mm.
So so as the lodge is winding down, we're going to be talking about our recommendations for the client. As I said, 65% or so will go on to solutions. So our solutions program is really conceived of, I refer to it as a rung in a ladder between what you'd call residential and what you'd call sober living. As you know full well, a lot of people will leave a residential program. They're on the street. Maybe they're going to sober living, maybe not. It's
Mm.
a pretty dramatic shift into the world, work, relationships, temptations, what have you.
Yeah.
So solutions I see as an airlock or a midpoint between sober living and residential. The guys are going to still have groups, although the number of groups will be decreased. They're going to be doing 20 hours a week of work in the community or legitimate, credible, accredited education. Sometimes they'll be doing service and volunteer work. After they've obtained their job or registered for school, they're going to be able to have their personal electronics more regularly. At the lodge, those are only on a supervised, more of an emergency basis. And then many of the clients will have a vehicle. They can travel on their own to go skiing with friends. They can go to their jobs or what have you. But they will be returning to reside they return to that one building solutions in
Mm.
the evening, and they cook with each other, and they also have required meetings, etc. So it's less structured than the lodge and more structured than sober living. Also, during that time, they are doing what you'd call sobriety jobs. We know these recovery jobs: grocery stores, hardware stores, gas stations. We had a man with I think, 9-figure trust fund, who was moving shopping carts around at a local supply store and one
Mm.
employee of the month twice. He had never punched a clock or worked like he had worked for his father's hedge fund. And now he was punching a clock
Mm.
with the rest of the human race.
Mhm.
And so the idea there is that the work that guys do is compatible with their focus on their continued recovery.
Yes.
And that would be solutions. And then after that, we do have a sober living program, including the physical facilities, the groups. The guys will go to outpatient groups, and then they'll be living in the sober living facility and going to the Jaywalker support groups. And then beyond that, and then of course there's less structure, right? There's still periodic UAs, there's groups. The guys have to do certain things, but they have less supervision. And then finally, the graduate program itself is available for guys who want more clinical support to continue, and a little more scaffolding beyond that. So those are kind of the 4 levels. And in terms of what people will do, the natural questions around, are you pursuing a career path for needs that are healthy to you, or is it associated in some way with your self-destruction? Is it inauthentic? Is it associated with a family story that no longer serves you? Is it authentic to you? We have a career counselor who works after the lodge with the guys, and we support the guys in either, returning to the work they were doing before, hopefully in a healthy manner, or discovering something new.
Mm-hmm. So you really do cover everything right to the end and beyond, really, because it's quite rare to find a service that provides such an extensive and long time frames. That your success rate must be exceptional.
Correct.
It really must be.
I don't study the numbers, but what I do know is that and we know this time in treatment in general is an indicator of success. We do know that the longer people stay in our continuum, the more that our numbers do surpass kind of averages. And I also want to make a point about numbers with parents and people who are looking at success and failure and such, whatever those words mean. It's often seen digitally. Treatment is a success if sobriety. Treatment is not a success if a person has a relapse or a slip or what have you. However, what we don't capture in those very straightforward studies is the effect of treatment on a person's overall life arc, the effect of treatment on the length of a person's slip versus their relapse, how quickly they return to recovery, how quickly they seek help versus go out and die or have a 3-year binge, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, to just give one example, I mentioned this earlier. We had a man who was a U.S. Marine, and he was out. I actually saw him in the community. He was, I think, in sober living or something. He had relapsed. I saw him drunk in the community. And when he returned to treatment, and he's been sober for a while now again, he said the only reason he came back to us was he was, for the first time in his life, felt there was a community that loved him and didn't judge him. And so what we don't capture is that. It's harder to capture in longitudinal studies. It's very, very important.
Yes.
Versus total sobriety after treatment versus a slip or a relapse, right?
Yeah.
So
that's
subtle stuff.
That's an incredible quote from a gentleman. You were just saying that this is the first
Yeah, it
time
was
he's
pretty
had.
pretty amazing.
Pretty
Yeah, no,
cool.
and actually another guy who just came back, who's a young man who was I think a banker in New York or what have you, and he was with us for a while, and he had some problems at home with painkillers. He had a couple surgeries and he relapsed. And when he got back to the Valley and got back here, he said he felt at home, which I thought was pretty profound.
Wow, that must get you. That really must get
It's
you.
nice.
Yeah.
Those are the nice ones. And I've got plenty of the not nice ones for you as well.
Of course. But it's always
Yeah.
nice to have those nice ones. It kind of puts in perspective the important work that you're doing.
Definitely a reason to show up for sure.
Absolutely. I'd just like to read a quote that I got from your website's expeditions page.
Sure.
That really struck a chord with me, Alex. It reads, "We believe that service to others is fundamental to the recovery process, and when it's time to play, the Rocky Mountains teaches jaywalkers the value of serious fun, what it means to live in that moment. Service to others is a key component of the solutions recovery model." That really got me. That really did. And it kind of encompasses everything that I've seen and heard that you guys do up there. And I just wanted to mention that because that's one heck of a statement. And
it's funny because Jaywalker, in terms of its reputation and its self-presentation, is famous for, wait a minute, you guys are ice climbing and you're skiing Aspen and you're doing volunteer work on Independence Pass, helping the Forest Service build trails. And so as a clinician, I'm an outdoors person myself, but I haven't really mentioned that aspect. The guys have opportunities 3 or 4 times weekly to be in the Rockies doing exceptional things, from rock climbing to mountain biking to running on the trails and this and that. And it's nice to be able to do those things. Obviously, it's a privilege. It's obviously, we know it's fantastic for mental health simply in virtue of the exercise. And we also know that from the standpoint of a group dynamic, as well as personally challenging oneself, if you've never skied, give it a try. We also have a full cultural program that isn't as indicated yet, but if you haven't painted or written poetry, we have workshops and things We have guys going to plays that were written by clinicians, stuff like that. But from a service standpoint, we do some service work in the lodge, but the solutions program has a built-in service day periodically where they go out into the community. We recently went and fed. There's a group of Venezuelan immigrants who are living under a bridge here, and they're being housed in various facilities, and we went and fed them a dinner and stuff. So that is happening, and I would like that to be enhanced, but it's certainly important.
So service to others is a key component. That's
right. And we know
so
also
important.
No, yeah, we know also in AA that's critical. And then also within our programs in a more a quotidian way, the guys are often called upon to cook dinner on a Sunday. They volunteer, or over at Solutions, they take turns cleaning and cooking and this and that. And just the kind of from, if you ever saw Black Hawk Down, where the Delta Force guy says to the Army Ranger, it's really about the man next to you. Ultimately, it's about the man fighting next to you. I feel like when it comes down to service, when it's in recovery, it becomes the ultimate thing is the person next to you. What do they need? How can you help them? How can they? That's how you're going to stay alive.
Very important lesson. Really, really is, especially in recovery. It's all about supporting each other and supporting the community and giving back. Really, I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
So last couple of questions, Alex. So what is next for Jaywalker Lodge, and what are your plans for the future?
Well, I can't speak to, if you will, the executive leadership team's vision, only because I'm not on it. But what I can say is what I've seen. There are a couple things that I've seen, and one would be we've recently we built we renovated a building for the landing. So the landing has become more capable of handling longer term, more acute, or need for more assessment, more stabilization, to directly address the acuity, the seriousness of the substances being used, the complexity of the mental health problems that we're seeing. And so the landing program itself has been augmented substantially so that it can, and also if we have a person, say in the lodge, this has happened recently, who's experiencing perhaps not suicidal planning, but an acute depression brought on by withdrawal plus facing their issues now in sobriety, we may move them over there for a bit. So the depth and breadth of the landing and its ability to handle more complex situations, that's gone up and is going up. Another area that is if you look at the metaphor of the right and left hand. So if the right hand is yang, strength, the outdoors, athleticism, what have you, the left hand is the heart, poetry, culture, the arts. We've been developing our left hand, our poetry, culture, arts, history, community arts participation program has been developing. I would say that you're likely to see in the next couple of years that the actual sense of Jaywalker and how it presents itself formally on the internet from a marketing standpoint will include those equally, because the fundamental model, the idea that we want to explore life and sobriety, means we explore worlds of the heart, the inner world, worlds of the mind and culture, as well as worlds of the body and athletics. So it's not just about your big book and your mountain bike, which kind of used to be the appropriate trademark. That, I believe, is going to be a destination for us. Another area where I believe we're going to be adding intensity and attention would be cross addiction, particularly around sex addiction and porn on the internet, which is huge right now, associated, also gambling and other things. So I think what you're going to see is, while these issues are addressed in certain groups and they're addressed by clinicians, I think you're going to see a more comprehensive approach to cross addiction. So those are some of the changes that I believe are going to be coming down. And then I think lastly, our new marketing director, relatively new, Casey Gooding, is a very effective and energetic advocate for the community, and he has been doing a great job in bringing speakers and bringing scholars and bringing practitioners here. And likewise, some of us will be speaking elsewhere. So I would say connecting us more deeply to the scholarship and to the recovery research world. And then lastly, I'll add our alumni community has been instrumental. You may be familiar in the 12-step world with back to basics workshops, the kind of workshops that bring the old style AA back in, where people work steps quickly with a group of people over a period of days and get fundamentally anchored in the roots of step work. That traditional approach to AA is also being brought in on the front end so that clients in the landing and early lodge are going to have a broad brush understanding of 12-step recovery. So those are some of the things happening around town, if you will.
Sounds like you're really progressing, and yeah,
We're trying.
yeah,
Yeah. And I'm sure that, yeah, I'm sure the executives have plans that I am totally unaware of.
of course. No, thank you for explaining that, Alex. And
Of course. Yeah.
so, is there anything at all I've missed, Alex, or if anything you'd like to mention at all?
Well, I really appreciate the questions, Chris. It's very nice to meet you, and I definitely honor the work you did in England, and now you're doing here. And I guess I would say that my personal hope is that I think that this model here is profound. I think that the model is absolutely profound. The idea of providing people with an opportunity to be open in a community that supports them, and to begin to explore what recovery actually would mean to them over the long term in a supportive container with a group of peers that they by and large really enjoy. And I have a dream, to echo Martin. I would like to see a brother entity to Jaywalker on the same model in inner city Denver. And I'd like to see the two entities work together so that the Jaywalkers up here would spend a couple weeks there and vice versa. Because I believe that this model would work regardless of race, class, economic, political, what have you, because it goes to the heart of being a human being. So what I would say is, if there's anything that I could encourage in the recovery world, is we see the insurance companies and the medical model and all these things pushing a short, I'm all for solution focused work, and it can work, and I use it sometimes, but this beautiful model I think would be profound in almost any part of the world, and I hope that it is explored elsewhere. That would be kind of my concluding comment. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to work here, and as a skier, I've got 36 days on the hill, and I love that too. That I kind of, so anyway, no, it's we have our flaws like every other program. We're not for everyone. We certainly have had our losses and our learning experiences, but I think the heart here is really, really solid.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your time, Alex. And I've learned so much. I've learned so much more just finding out about you today. And obviously, when I've researched you and what you guys deliver is beyond exceptional. I'm very, very, very proud to have you explain everything to me today. And I'm looking forward to telling all the followers about you and the great work that you do. I'm going to have all the information where you can find Jaywalker in the links below any of these videos. So, and obviously, thank you very much indeed, Alex. I really appreciate it. You have a great day.
Thank you. And Chris, no, thank you so much. And we'd love to have you visit. You'd be welcome to come visit and look around. Please do come out.
I'd love to. Thank you.
All right. All right, my friend.